I loved the transportation in Hungary. I think Europe does really good with their public transport, and it was fantastic. By bus or train or something we call a villamos, which is kind of like a tram, or the metro. In the big city in Budapest, they do have a subway, the metro system. My absolute favorite was the trains. I loved taking the trains. I remember my first experience getting on a train, I was just like, oh my gosh, because I'd never ridden a real train before. Actually, that's a lie, I did once. And then my second train that I got to ride on, it was so much like the Harry Potter trains where you had your own little compartment with the sliding door. It was fantastic. When I served in Budapest, in the big city, I was actually in a city called Kispest, which was right next to it, but we would use the metro a lot, and we used to try metro surfing, like trying to not hold on to any of the bars and just see how well you could balance. So Hungary definitely has its own culture. They have their own customs and traditions. They're fun. I like them. One of the big important ones that I needed to get used to was how to formalize the older people in the way that you speak. With the way that the language works as you're talking to them, it's not that you're saying you or like directly speaking with this person. It's kind of like a third person thing, like, oh, how is she feeling today? Or like, how does it please you to, or how does it please him to be today, or stuff like that. And so the conjugations of words were very different. It was different, but it was fun. Once I was able to do it, I was intimidated by it at first, like how to do it, because it was just so hard. It was hard to learn how to talk to an individual to begin with, so then to change your grammar, like that just made it harder. But it's impolite to sniffle if you have a runny nose. You just have to blow it. They'll give you a tissue. They'll be like, oh, here, take this, like, get it out, because it just doesn't make sense to them to try to keep it in if it's trying to come out. It's just like, get it out. And so you'll be in meetings and who knows where, and they blow their noses so well, so loud. So I got really good at that too. So you'd better get used to that. Don't feel self-conscious about blowing your nose in Hungary, because everybody does it. Another thing is that they're more cautious or more concerned about freezing, about getting cold or getting sick from being cold. So they don't put ice in their water. They never have ice water. And there's a bit of logic to it, as I came to know. It's just like your body's already trying to keep warm as it is. Like the organs are trying to work. So as you're putting that ice water in, it just kind of freezes things up. So in the end, I can see the logic in why they don't drink ice water. When it's cold outside, especially in the winter, you don't sit down on any of the benches. It's not acceptable. Or like you can. You're not going to go to prison for it or anything, but all the little old nannies and bachies, old men and old women, they'll come up to you and tell you, like, don't sit there. You're not going to have children. So it was interesting. Hungary does have a lot of the same foods we have. They have cereal, they have yogurt and pastas and bread and meat. Like, there's a lot of things that they have that we do too. It was really hard to come by brown sugar. They also don't have much peanut butter. It's very rare that you find it, but then it's still very different there. They use paprika a lot in their recipes. I guess here in the States we call it paprika, but paprika. Then they have a lot of meats that they're well known for. They have, I guess it's comparable to sausage, but they have something called kolbász, and that's put in a lot of their foods. A lot of what they make, they'll use that. One of my favorite things to have though is something they call madárté, and that translates to bird's milk, but it's not that, because obviously birds don't have milk. But it was made with eggs, and the consistency of it is kind of like eggnog and pudding, I guess would be the consistency. And then they take the egg whites and whip them till it's kind of more of a solid foamy type consistency, and then they put that into the liquid portion. It's kind of hard to explain, but it was just so good. It's sweet. It's more of a dessert type thing. But oh, the bakeries, they have bakeries all over the place. It was kind of bad. I would go to them more than I should have. Had a lot of their ice cream. In the summertime they have ice cream shops on almost every corner, and man, it's so good. There's something different about the ice cream there. It's so good. Poppy seeds show up in all sorts of things, so that was neat. But yeah, the breads were great. Yeah, I could go on forever, but it was good. So the lifestyle of the Hungarians, I would say it's pretty similar to what we have here in the States. Kids go to school, the parents try to work, they have family time. They're people, just like we are. And so a lot of the things they do are a lot of the things that we would do, that they want to be happy. They want to have success in life. They eat like we do. So they're people. Rather than just going out maybe once every other week or every week to go get their groceries, it's a lot easier for them to go get things fresh every day. So they have these markets and the bakeries that they can go to. And so they can get fresh produce, fresh baked goods every day. And so a lot of the people will do that. Work is also, it can be hard to come by. It is a little bit different there, how the school works. I think they have an extra grade there. I thought it was interesting that they don't typically serve food. Like, they don't have the cafeteria for the students at their schools. They take their own food. So they have like a little bit of release time between each class, at least the schools that I was in, because sometimes we had the opportunity to teach English in the schools. There was one city where it worked out perfectly. We were able to go about once or twice a week to teach some of the teenagers in their high school. And that was when I became aware of it. I was like, oh, they don't have lunchtime, like they don't have a cafeteria. And they're like, yeah, we just eat in between our classes. Rather than them going up and moving to different classrooms for a different subject, the teachers came to them. So there was a specific class where they were in, that was their classroom, and then the teachers would rotate classrooms. So that was interesting. I don't know if that's every school in the country, but I found that to be common. Something else interesting that I really loved about the culture there was shops would close for the weekend. Like on Saturdays they were open till a certain point, but it was like once it became evening, once it was getting later in the day, a lot of the stores would close, which I thought was interesting because that's not something common that I would see here back home. A lot of the malls are open, a lot of the grocery stores stay open, but it was neat because it showed that they actually cared about having family time. They wanted to be home with their families. They wanted to have a break from the busy day-to-day things they do throughout the week. And so on Sundays, the city seemed so dead. Sometimes it was like there wasn't so much going on because people wanted to be with their families. And that was more noticeable in the smaller cities. I'm sure that in Budapest it wasn't as common. I wasn't ever really in Buda or Pest on Sundays. I served in Kispest when I was in the big city. But there were smaller places like Szolnok and Kecskemét, and even in Pécs, these different cities I served in, that everything just seemed so mellow. And if you went out and saw people out and about, they were usually with their families, like with their kids going on walks or on their way to their church services. So the architecture in Hungary is so beautiful just because there's so much history there. I had a lot of fun just looking at the buildings sometimes because it was just like, that's so pretty. And I had some opportunities to go with my companions to visit different castles or cathedrals, and it was just always so fun. So they have big cities, they have their smaller towns, but then they have villages, and it's just so fun to go to them. And yeah, this family, they wanted to cook a meal for us, and instead of just like, here where you would just like either put it in the oven or cook on a stove or whatever, they actually went out in their yard and built a fire and had this big cauldron that they hooked up with like this stand and this chain, and it was just hanging over this fire, and it was just really neat. I was like, oh my goodness. So that's not something you would typically see. You would not see that in the big city, but in this small village, it was just so chill. It was so normal to do that. It's like, yeah, we're just gonna cook over this fire in this big cauldron thing, and it was fun. I was like, that's so cool. They had a lot of 10 stories. That's what we called them, or 10 stories. They were the big gray, they were usually gray cement buildings from the communist era where they had communism there. So that was something that you could see a lot of. And there were places where you'd see a lot of graffiti. And I like graffiti. I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I'd see some artistic walls and streets of things where I was just like, that is so cool. But obviously it's not good to deface public property, I know. It was interesting. You could just feel in the air. You could still feel the weight that communism had on the country, on the Hungarian people. So yeah, it was happy, it was fun, but you could feel that. You could feel that they had been through a lot. You could feel that the people were recovering from a really hard era. And you would get talking with some of the people about it. The older people definitely had a lot more to say about that time because they lived through it. Some people even saw when, like before communism was there, lived through everything, and it was just interesting to hear them compare how life was to how it is now. A lot of the youth understand what happened as well around World War I, where Hungary, it actually was reduced in size. Today it's only 1/3 the size it used to be. Now you look at the map of Hungary and it's a lot smaller. The boundaries of it are a lot smaller than what it used to be when it was a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And so, yeah, you hear people talk about that a lot. Hungary has been through a lot. They've been through a lot of hardships, a lot of hard experiences as a country, but they're so strong. They're strong people. And sometimes it was hard to get them to open up at first because they would be skeptical because of the things they've been through, that sometimes they weren't as trusting to new things, that the older people would be like, oh no, like I don't want to talk about this, or they were a bit standoffish. But once you got to know them, or when you were able to get through, they are just some of the most loyal people, and you come to see how strong they really are, how they are an amazing people. One of the most memorable experiences has to do with a sunflower field. I love sunflowers. And in Hungary, in the summertime, they have the most amazing fields of sunflowers. And they're just, I don't know, almost breathtaking, at least for me, just because I love them so much. Just to see these fields that just go on forever of sunflowers, it's just amazing. And the people do harvest them, like they use them to make oil, they use the sunflower seeds, so they are put to use. And I remember when I was called to go serve in the city of Szolnok, they drove us out there, and I remember passing all these sunflower fields, and it was the first time I had seen them for myself, and I just thought, oh my goodness, like I want to go there. I want to go take pictures there. I just want to go be a part of that. And so from then on, I just started talking to my companion about it. I'm like, whenever we get the opportunity, we have to go. We have to go to them. And she was like, oh, okay. She had already seen them before, so she wasn't as enthusiastic about it, but she was just like, okay, if it means that much to you, you know, I guess we can try to work it out. And so we decided on August 20th, which is a huge holiday for them. It's kind of like the equivalent of our 4th of July here. So we got on a train and we went out to this little village called Piroshka. We had passed the sunflower field, so we would need to walk like back following the railroad tracks. And so I was just so excited. I was just booking it, not running, but I was walking pretty quick. I was like, we're gonna do this. This is gonna work. And we had about 2 hours before another train would come to take us back to Szolnok. And so I just wanted to make sure we got there and did it and had time to walk back to the train stop. So anyway, there were 5 of us, and they were more chill about it. They were like, oh, it's fine, we'll get there. But I was just like, we have to get there. And we got to one point where the railroad track split, where the tracks, they would either go straight and there wasn't a road right next to them or a pathway right next to it, and then there was another track that went the other way that kind of peeled off, and the pathway that we were on followed that. And so then we had to decide what we were going to do, because we couldn't remember which track we had come on, if we had come straight or if we had turned ever. And so we were trying to think, oh, which way should we go? And everyone's looking at me because I had to make the decision. It was my trip. And so I decided it would probably be better to just stay on the path, because it seemed a lot safer rather than like trudging through these dead cornfields off to the side of this other track. I was like, let's just stay on the path. That was a wrong choice. Well, I guess both choices could have been wrong, but we followed this pathway and we just kept going and going and going and going. And we were just surrounded by dead fields, dead sunflowers, dead corn stalks, dead everything. And it was just so hot. It's the middle of August. And one of the elders with us, he's a germaphobe. He does not share things with people, but it had gotten to a point where he was drinking all of our water. He was like dying. Everybody's dying all of a sudden. It sounds really bad, but it was a pretty intense situation. So I'm feeling bad, like I'm killing everybody, because now we're like stranded out in the middle of this like dead wasteland, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? So we were at a point where it was like, well, if we turn around and head back, we've already missed our train that would have taken us back. It would have taken too much time to go that way. And so we're just trying to think, well, should we just keep going this way? Should we go back to the old tracks? Anyway, so we keep walking, and finally we see the freeway. We see the main road that connects Szolnok to Budapest, the capital. So we can just see this overpass in the distance. And so we decide, okay, we can at least make it to that. That's our destination right now. So we finally make it over there, and one of the elders went up with the member. They went up on top, like they followed these stairs up to like the top of the freeway just to try and assess where we were. And they saw these road signs that indeed, they directed us either to Budapest or to Szolnok, the city that we were serving in. And we were quite a ways out of the city. We were quite a ways out. I cannot tell you how many miles or kilometers it was. I just know we were a long ways away. And we decided, okay, well, this is the most promising route that we have, so we're just gonna follow the freeway back to the city. And so we had to trudge through this pit of thorns. It was bad. The elders got down in it and helped me leap across it, and then they're gonna help my companion, but she fell in it, and so she's all scratched up now. So I'm just feeling really bad. This dream that I had to go out to the sunflower field that everyone supported suddenly was just a disaster. Everyone's dehydrated and tired and hot and just, oh, it was awful. So we followed the freeway for a long time, and finally we got to the outskirts of Szolnok, and we saw this old couple watering their yard outside. They were just out with their hose, and we probably looked like a pathetic sight, but we went up to their fence. It was a chain link fence, and we get their attention, and we're like, could you please just fill up our water bottles with some water, because we had our water bottles still. And they just looked at us, and they just thought it was so strange, but then they were like, yeah, we can do that for you. So we handed our water bottles to them through the fence, and they filled it up, and we just chugged that water. We all took turns just chugging water, and they were like, could you fill it up just one more time for our road? We didn't tell them what we had been up to or anything. We were just like, we just need some more for the road. And they're like, okay. So they filled it up, and we were able to go on our merry way back to the city. And trying to make this very long story kind of shorter, we did make it back to the city. We had left the city at about 10 a.m. to go find the field, and we didn't get back. Or maybe we left even earlier than that. I don't remember. But we didn't get back till well into the late afternoon, like 3, 4 o'clock. It was quite late. And who knows how many miles we walked, but it was insane. So it was a really hard experience. I then treated everyone to ice cream later that day because I was like, I'm so sorry. I almost killed us. We never saw the field. And so I owed everybody ice cream, and I just felt so bad. But we now all look back on it and we have to laugh. It was just one of those ridiculous experiences. On a day we could have been partying and having a lot of fun, we got lost in a sunflower field, a dead one. So in Hungary, you'll see a lot of what we call kézimunka, and that translates to more like handiwork or like the hand stitching, or sometimes they do paintings on ceramic or porcelain. And something that I did get while I was over there was this. And so this was hand stitched, all of the flowers and the words and everything. The people there are very, very skilled with their hands with what they do. At the metro station in Budapest, in the capital. So Hungary is a gorgeous country. I love it. I immediately fell in love with how green it was. Hungary has all 4 seasons. They have summer, fall, winter, spring. They have it all. It's a pretty humid climate. Even though they're not right by the ocean or anything, it is fairly humid. They have the Duna, or the Danube River, that runs through Budapest and cuts down through Hungary. There's the Tisza River. They have the Balaton. So they have bodies of water. They have rivers. It gets really, really hot. So even though the temperature may be at a certain degree, just because it's humid, you just feel it so much more and you're just sweating. Most of the places don't have air conditioning. Autumn was beautiful. Winter, it gets really cold. It just goes right through your clothes and to the bone. Yeah, it snows, it rains a lot. I loved the rainstorms. In the summer, you get a lot of rain and thunder and lightning and all of that. It was so great. In the northeastern part of Hungary, you'll find a lot of farmland. I'm sure they still have a lot of that out in the west is short as well, but there's an area called Hortobágy, and there's some surrounding villages and cities out there where they do have a lot of farms, ranches, and stuff like that. And of course there's the big cities. And in other cities as well, you would come to places, to little markets where there would be older women that would be selling flowers, like bouquets of flowers, and it was just so sweet to see them. And once I did take the opportunity to just stop and visit with one of the women, and I bought some flowers from her because they were just so sweet. Some of the money, I don't know how this is going to show up. I just wanted to do a little show and tell. What they use in Hungary is called forint. These are just some of the bills. This is the 500, 1,000, and 2,000 forint. And the way that it conforms is it's almost like, for example, if we take the 2,000 and drop the 2 zeros on the end and then divided that 20 in half, then it's about 10 American dollars.